Nerds, welcome to the Booknerds Podcast. We are in for a treat today because we are going to talk about an amazing book. It's called, it's of course the Authorized Biography of Captain Amarinder Singh, and it is written by none other than Mr. Khushwant Singh. Welcome, sir, to the podcast.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me over.
Uh, Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Let me tell you, sir, it has been a wonderful 2 to 3 days for me because I have been like going through it. I have read it before, but I wanted to refresh my memory about this one, and of course, the lockdown has helped a lot. I hope you are doing well during this lockdown.
Yes, I'm fine and I'm trying to write another book. Let's see how far it goes. But I think being in lockdown is not a good feeling, whatever we might want to say, um, because I think the choice of being free is very important.
So my first question, of course, is about my favorite part about the book. When Captain Amarinder Singh was very young, around 4 years old, and he goes on to, ask his sister, who used to take care of him at that time, that can I, wield the gun against my uh, head Dayal, who was, of course, used to teach them and had a temporary school running in the premises. So tell me more about that part of the book.
So wasn't he a brat right from the word go?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Uh, he's a fine human being, a thorough gentleman. I think that story is very interesting. I'll tell you, when I started working on the book, I chanced upon these papers. Mrs. Hede Dayal, she was the governess of the royal kids. She'd been hired by the Maharani to look after the early education, of the children, of the siblings. Um, and during that course, there's this incident. Sister Welsh was the nanny actually,
Yes, yes,
and what had happened was that. So how I got these papers were I got in touch with Hede Dayal's son who lives in Chandigarh,
oh,
and I
wonderful.
chanced upon this treasure. She had typed these notes. Maybe she wanted to write her own memoirs or something, which never happened. But she had. So this was my actually the foundation of the book. This is something very, very important that I chanced upon while working on the biography. So this incident pertains to this part when Captain Amarinder's uh, parents are going abroad, and he's kind of thrown a tantrum that you can't go, and uh, they tell him that once we are not here, you are the king, and you have to take care of the state. And he really took it very seriously. He's about 4 or 5, and then he just got the cars out, the flag put on, went up till Kasoli, all sorts of games of shikar, and try to emulate um, you know so much what his father did, until Hede Dayal put her foot down, and that this cannot happen. And then at one point he's asking his nanny that I want to shoot this lady Hede Dayal. So the nanny is saying, no, you can't, darling.
Right.
You just can't. So yeah, that's an incident, very interesting incident.
Yeah, I actually felt that they were while reading the book that there were so many books within this book. I mean, if you could pick and choose, I mean, you can come up with another book or more perhaps, because there are so many aspects of his life that can be explored. I mean, his time in the army and his time at the Doon School and later on as a politician, an entrepreneur. I was wondering how, I mean, if somebody is capable of having so many aspects. So my next question was that while writing the book, you have mentioned that you were having a hard time, uh, me getting information out of Captain Amarinder Singh because he was too busy. So how did that work out in the structure of the book?
So I think, I mean, the book took about 4 years, but I would not say it was hard in terms of getting information.
Okay.
It was only managing the time. I mean, he didn't uh, stop any information. I think I have 100 hours of recording with him, audio recording, uh, where he's talked about his life, where he's shared all the incidents. Any question that I had, he never bucked that. He never asked me to write something, you know, rosy, or asked me to delete something which was unpleasant, because the book covers all aspects. And talking about the aspects, I've written another biography. I wrote Fauja Singh's biography, the oldest marathon runner.
Yes.
Uh, uh, so that was largely an easy book, because it was Fauja's early life and then his running life, and the element of his human spirit, the triumph of the human spirit. But here with Amarinder, Captain, um, I don't think so. There's a character like him in Indian politics, such a versatile character with so many elements. So there's history, such a rich history. I mean, the Patiala royal. So I had to dig into that. So that's a whole different, um, you know, aspect. I mean, books and books have written about just their history.
Yeah.
Um, so I had to dig the history, bring that into perspective. Then, when he was born, so I had to dig so many. I wanted to understand what happened when he was born. I mean, he was an heir after, two girls. A boy was born,
Yes.
and I spent time in the palace. I went through the Roj Namcha, and those Roj Namchas basically daily diaries where all uh, the daily minutes of the palace are recorded.
Okay.
And I, picked out the stuff when he was born, and it's incredible. I mean, a separate book can be written when he was born.
Yes.
The 101 cannon salute, distribution of grains, the announcement, the coming in of the sirdars, the other royalties, the stories of the inside drawing room, andruni drawing room, what they
Right.
call it,
Right.
the dancing of the tawaifs, and all that. And then his young life, is so interesting till he goes to school. Doon School itself is a story in itself. Um, then his army life,
Yeah.
then he joins politics and the whole. So it's a massive study.
Yeah.
So it also opened up, so many layers, because Captain Amarinder is not an inactive politician, or he's just there. That so during the peak of Punjab terrorism, for example, I mean, if you were to ask me that question, um, he was involved in the talks. So much of information he had, and I think this book kind of sets a benchmark for further writers to understand that what happened at that time, and to take this forward of what I have been able to unearth,
Yeah. I,
through this
I
book.
I certainly would agree. Not that you are on the podcast and I'm just saying it, because I I have read some books in this regard regarding what happened in 1984 and those tumultuous times. But it was quite a history of overall history of Punjab. Anybody who reads the book will be able to get an idea of what was happening throughout these years. And so I wanted to ask you, in a part of the book, Hedi Dayal mentions that she was worried for Amrinder Singh because since he was the heir, and perhaps he would have a tough time, getting a proper perspective about his life growing up. So tell us more about that part of the book, please.
I don't know if I can read out, if you want me to.
Yeah, why not? Why
Uh,
not? Why not? Yeah,
I think that would be. Let me just check that, because I think it puts. So anyone would be worried. I think,
yeah.
as a teacher, anyone would be worried that what would be the future of a child with so much of entitlement.
Right.
Anyone would be worried,
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
teacher,
yeah.
and. And then there were incidents and instances which kind of led towards that belief that
Yes.
but I think Captain Amarinder surprised everyone, and is today the finest politician with empathy, with leadership qualities, and and it's right. So let me read that passage. So this
Yeah.
This passage is on page 56. It's from the chapter Growing Up.
Yeah.
It's from the chapter Growing Up, page 56.
Yeah.
As I grew familiar with the ways of the princely court, it became apparent how very difficult it was for the one born to the throne to grow up with a proper perspective on life. How can the Yuvraj learn to assess himself in surroundings where all his actions are applauded as extraordinary and outstanding achievements? If none of his faults and failures are brought to notice, how can he rectify them? An ordinary child knows by the reactions of people around him when he's stupid or clever, lovable or obnoxious. He adjusts to his environment in order to be accepted. But if people are to gain from the weakness and failings giving false sense of values, the temptation to do so is so great. This applies to an environment where advantages are not temporary but promise of future advancement. Even a princely child is bound to stumble onto defects in his makeup, which he has not been able, which he has not been made to see. He grows uncertain of himself and starts looking for selfish motives in everyone's behavior. He's likely to develop an inferiority complex because he never because he is never quite sure whether others really appreciate him for himself or if they only pretend to do so for what they can get out of him. What a terrible handicap. But I must tell you that on page 83, where I sum up his military life,
Yes.
so Mrs. Heyday Dayal met him at that point, and she
Okay.
observes that his years in the army changed him completely, was observed by Heyday Dayal, his former governess, who had expressed serious concerns about the kind of person that Yuvraj might turn into. She who met him after many years had this to say. It was only after he joined the academy at Khadakwasla that a great change in his attitude became apparent. To me, the change was truly amazing. He became disciplined and attentive young man, highly spoken of by his superiors and everyone else who had dealings with him. Whomever I met stressed that nothing in his modest manner pointed to his princely background. So what a change!
Yeah. Yeah. What a
So
change.
he had those qualities. He was a man with very subtle qualities.
Yeah.
He was young, chararti, brat, everything, but he had these very subtle qualities which, if harnessed, and shaped well, uh, made him a thorough gentleman.
Yeah, I you have mentioned the part where India has gone to war with Pakistan in, I think so, the 1965 war, and he was also involved in the capacity of being ADC to the, I think,
Never
Lieutenant
heard about
General. Yes, yes. So during that time, that experience must have been invaluable for him. And how difficult was it for him to go back, because he was out of commission at that point of time, and he was called back, right?
Even though the army life is a very short part in his life, um, but he's an army man at heart. I mean, you meet him, you converse with him. Um, it's so much about army, so many memories, so many observations through the eyes, of an army man, of a soldier. His responses are like that. They're not like a politician,
Yeah.
They're more like a soldier at heart.
Yeah.
Um, so he had quit the army. His father wanted him to come back. In fact, it's an observation which I've taken from General Harbaks's
Okay.
autobiography, where he showed interest to come back because so General Harbaksh in fact talks about him as a very true patriot,
Yeah.
um, and very fondly about him. So he arranged for his joining back the army, and he was his ADC. So and General Harbaksh was leading from the front in this war. Um, yes, invaluable experience that was in terms of leadership. Actually, I think
Yes.
that also is a very important chapter in his life, because if we witness him in a certain form, if we see those certain qualities of leadership, I think they would have been picked up from those war room design meetings.
Yeah. In fact, later on in the book, you have talked about his interactions with General Musharraf, and how he managed to, act very diplomatically and get those prisoners of war and fishermen out immediately within one day. I don't think so any other leader from India has, managed to do that with people from across the border.
So I think when Captain Amarinder walks in anywhere, what I've seen is that so he carries this persona, this very or this strong aura about him, which is a mix of being a royal,
Yeah,
of being an army man,
it's a,
and his own personality,
it's a
the own
lethal
own.
combination.
It's a and a chief minister. So
Yeah,
it's a very very and his own charm and charisma.
yeah,
So I think with General Musharraf, um, it was very easy for them to connect because they were from the army and they could break the ice much more quicker than any traditional politicians, or one politician being an army man and the other being just a politician. It's difficult for them to kind of
yes.
yes. So I think he carries that charisma, and it I think helps him in his uh, you know uh, in in getting what he sets his mind on.
So, sir, it has been a while since the book is out. I believe reading this back in 2018 or something, and you must have received some feedback and what you have heard from readers and other people. What is the kind of feedback that has come in for the book?
Well, the book was released in 2017. In
17.
fact,
Yeah.
I think I need to update it soon because it is after the release he became the chief minister for the second time.
Yes.
Um, and when I started writing the book, he was down and he had lost an election.
Yeah.
People were really not putting their money on him. They were not betting on him, I would say, and everyone thought he's gone in oblivion as part of Punjab politics. But he's a sturdy man. He worked his way up, and he's there. And now he's, I think, one of the champions, one of the top chief ministers who's leading the war against Corona.
Yeah.
He's led from the front, and Punjab is one of the top examples
Yeah.
uh, of it. Uh, so I released it then, and the feedback. I think the feedback has been good. An odd critique.
Okay.
I think the book is so. So the book is not a hagiography. Let me tell you. Let me just clear this.
Yeah.
The book uh, captures all elements, his challenges, has critiqued um, you know, where I think he could have done better, or his shortcomings. If every human has shortcomings, um, it has spared none. Whatever came to my domain, whatever information came to my domain, I have put that in the book. I did a lot of research. Um, Largely, I think the feedback has been good. I mean, feedback without reading has been critical. People who haven't read it, they talk it as hagiography, में चमचागिरी है, ये वो है, and no one knows कि before he became the chief minister, ये किताब release हुई.
Yes.
So that bakwas is there,
Yes.
But someone who has read it, I think they have critiqued it on its content.
I would vouch for it, in fact, because the last thing that it can be called is hagiography. Because I was, rooting for him throughout the book that when will he win, actually? Because
So
there are so many, setbacks in his life, political life. I mean, he tried to be an entrepreneur, and failed at it. Yeah.
every story has been captured. In fact,
Yeah.
so maybe in fact I write in the introduction that maybe as a biographer I've put him at a disadvantage, his good points at a disadvantage, because I have held back words of applause, I mean, in that to
Yes.
applaud him, but whereas I have not shied away from criticizing him.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a disadvantage as a biographer. Maybe I've been unfair to him in that element.
I don't
So
think so. I think you have been pretty honest in depicting what actually happened. And I would like to go back to when the book was being conceptualized. Uh, what happened and how were you approached for this? Because of course, you have the pedigree to do it. You have multiple books to your name, including Maharaja in denim and others. But how did that happen?
We should do a book session on Maharaja and denims actually
Why
next
not?
time.
Why not? Why not?
It's an excellent book. The first book, a fiction book to bring the narrative of the turbulent Punjab. The
Yes.
first fiction,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah.
But your question
Uh,
regarding that how it started was that in 2012, just before the elections, everyone thought Congress is going to come back, and everyone thought that obviously Amarinder Singh is going to be the next chief minister of Punjab. So before the elections, Hay House approached me that they are interested in having a biography of Captain Amarinder, and would I be keen? I said yes. I said let the election results come in, and I'll ask, because if he loses again, it's really
quite
uh,
quite tough, to be honest.
so uh, and he lost.
Yeah.
But the publisher then said that it doesn't make sense. But I said I'm going to ask him. He's free, he has time, and I have heard so many stories from him in his drawing room or at my place, talking about the Punjab issues where he had been meeting Sant Longowal, Sant Pindrawale, Indira Gandhi, mediating between this thing. So there are his military stories, stories of his ancestors. I thought there's a very interesting book, and that narrative must be brought out. So 2 days after he lost, I met him and I said, I want to write your biography. Will you allow me? He says, who'll buy it? I said, that's a separate matter.
Yeah.
Okay, he says, that's fine. And we started. And I think we were recording the next day.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah. It took me 4 years. Yes. It was,
Wow.
and 4 years to write, and 1 year in 2017 it was published. Yeah.
Yeah. The very fascinating parts of the book were when he was, of course, mediating between the so-called militants, and of course the government, and he was in the middle of everything, and he was putting his life in danger as well. I remember a part where he goes to the residence of Bhindranwale, if I'm pronouncing it right or not. But he goes there and sleeps in his charpai. I mean, that is super fascinating. Those parts.
Yes. So it's a very as much as it's fascinating, it's also a very important part of history. That story. Um, so as part of his, how he was meditating, he had to meet Pindrawale, and he went to his residence in,
Yeah.
I think it was Faridkot district at that time, and Pindrawale had gone to, for his lectures, um, and by the time he, came back, it was very late, but it was a very cold night. So Captain Amarinder says that it was so cold that it was like that. I just asked the Sevadar that we are feeling very cold, and he
Yeah.
says,
Yeah.
just sleep in the,
Yeah.
in the razai there, and it was Pindrawale's bed, a charpoy.
Yeah.
So he was a very simple man, Captain Amarinder was telling
Yeah.
me, a man, who was led by a propaganda of Pakistan, perhaps,
Yes.
uh, but a very simple man. And
But there were some really tough decisions which Captain Amrinder had to take, because he had to leave parties. I mean, he had to leave Congress after Operation Blue Star, and later on also he has had numerous tiffs with the High Command. So tell us more about those parts. How did he handle those things?
well, I think they're all part of political, calls that you have to take, as well as personal calls, emotional calls. 1984, after Operation Blue Star, I think that was a very emotional call for him to resign. Uh, he was close to the Gandhis, everything was there.
Yeah.
Uh, but uh, but I thought that, but he thought that this Operation Blue Star is out of order. Um, and apart from one part that it was in out of order, there was a family history associated with Akal Takht.
Yeah.
And so he just could not, be part of that. and he resigned. And he's been very morally very strong. You look at his pattern. I mean, he has resigned whenever uh, you know. Uh, Whenever he has been required to stand up for something, he has not hesitated or shuddered to resign. He has handed over that resignation. Whether I think it was 86 Operation Black Thunder, he was a minister then.
Yeah.
So the moment his career kind of started picking up, he became an MP in 80 and 84. He had to retire. Then he became a minister, agriculture minister, and Operation Black Thunder happened. He resigned again. So he's been very clear on it.
Yeah. And in fact, later on in the book, he has been hailed as, you have mentioned him as Pani da Rakha, and which was a momentous decision in the history of Punjab when he took an innovative step. So would you like to share more about the decision?
So he is, he is like that. So if you look at these incidents in isolation, they don't seem much. But if you join the dots, right, then you suddenly see a personality. Right, you join 84, you join Operation Black Thunder, resignation, you join this termination of the Waters Treaty. Then you suddenly see a man, who has stood for his religion, for his culture, for his region, for his people, for his state.
Yeah.
So suddenly the combination. So the book is, I've written this book, but 4-5 years ago, but it's about Punjab had to complete its part of the SYL canal, and they really didn't know, how to, handle this issue, because as a chief minister, his view was that if we go ahead with this was one of the causes of, Punjab's terrorism. The young boys at that time were kind of brainwashed and, incited towards this, that Punjab's water is being taken away.
Yeah.
So he, as a chief minister, he was, of this political view, as well as a chief minister, law and order view, and seeing there was already history to understand the problem. So they decided that, so they came out with a plan that they'll just, take it away from, in the Vidhan Sabha. The treaty, they'll cancel it in the Vidhan Sabha. And that's what they did. And the Congress government was at the center. So that was that's the biggest challenge, you're a Congress chief minister, and you don't even consult your party,
right,
by high command, the prime minister. So there are two sides to the coin, which I've mentioned, that whether what he did was constitutionally right, or but at the same time, as a Punjabi, what he did was right. So it's a very, it's not for me to answer as such the debate on that. But he didn't consult anyone, and once he did that, there was a hue and cry, because the media was after the central government, that what has your chief minister done? And Haryana elections were coming up, and so obviously Haryana's water was being stopped, and Congress had no position to go. With what face would they go to Haryana? And I've recalled an incident there that Mrs. Gandhi was very upset with him, and she met him after 6 months, and when she met him, she says, "Ye kya, you didn't tell." She didn't meet him till, I think, Mrs. Ambika Soni had to intervene and get an appointment. So he says, he asked her, कि मैं अगर आपको बताता तो आप मुझे करने देते? So I guess she said no. So he says, that's it.
That was pretty Punjabi of him, to be honest.
Well, I think so, but there are many Punjabi people around. They haven't shown the Punjabi yet.
yeah, I would disagree with that.
No, but that's an off-the-cuff remark. That is not my political position. I mean, I'm just a biographer. So,
of course. Please tell us more about how you got into writing, because reading this book, I think the craft is pretty much, at least according to people whom I talk to who have read the book, is pretty much in place. And I think you have grown throughout this book also. So what is your opinion about your writing? Can you be objective about it?
So I started writing in about 98, 99, and I mean, I'm a, f- I was a farmer by background.
Okay.
Though I'm a student of mass communication,
Okay.
I went back to my farm, but I was very passionate about agriculture issues. And one day I was sitting in Delhi, with a family friend. He was the resident editor of Times of India. And I was talking about technology. In fact, I was the first one to write, if you would to go back into history.
Yeah.
I, though 98, 97, we only had that Yahoo thing coming in, and they had that
Yeah.
one little weather report.
Yes.
And I had grown potatoes, and I had saved a crop, by looking at the weather report. Now you have Google and everything, it's different. But that
Yes.
time, it took about 20 minutes for that weather report to open on that 418, whatever computer,
Yes.
and that modem.
Yes.
So he said, why don't you write a piece on it? And I wrote a piece for Times of India, and I loved having my byline.
Yes.
And I was a young boy, so passionate about agriculture issues, new bringing in new technology. So I started writing a lot about technology,
Okay.
about agriculture.
Yeah.
And then Times of India came to Chandigarh, to Punjab. So the same gentleman said, why don't you start writing for us? And I started writing, and then, I decided to become an author. Talking about my writing, I mean, I'm just what? Uh, it's for others to critique. Um, I'm not the best, but I can't be ignored, I can tell you.
Okay. In fact, talking about newspapers, the Tribune has played a major part in this book. There are so many excerpts from there. Uh, Tell us about the significance of the Tribune throughout these times, which you have chronicled.
So, Tribune was the only regional newspapers, and Tribune has archives. So you wouldn't believe that from 48 onwards, I first I started doing it myself. Then there was this young student from a mass comm department. She helped me from 1940. Sorry, not 48. From 1960, 68 onwards. After once it comes into politics,
Okay.
um, we dug out each and every newspaper from the archives to find his name.
Wow. Wow.
Every newspaper, every
And
days.
this is like physical newspapers, not
Physical
digital.
newspaper,
Wow.
the archives lying here in Sector 15 in Lala Lajpat Rai Library.
Okay.
And she would go there, or I would go there, and she would get those pages Xeroxed every single day till I think 80, till we find, till it's online, till 98.
Wow. Wow. That
That's
must
what
be
we
something.
did. That's why so extensively Tribune, because Tribune had the archives and was regional.
Yeah. I actually wanted to read a very, or perhaps, I don't know. I love this passage. I wanted to read this. Uh, it's on page number 262, and this is the chapter Imperfections and Perfections. It quite beautifully sums up uh, Captain's personality also.
Yes, Veera.
He had the capacity to deliver and could lean on things he wanted to push. He was a chief minister who was astute, sharp, knowledgeable, and a quick decision maker. Cabinet ministers, bureaucrats, technocrats, and police officers vouch for these qualities and remember him as a chief minister who was in command of the proceedings once he started gaining in experience. I wanted to ask you during the narrations, was he worried about something that should not be mentioned in the book? I know you have mentioned very slightly that some
Not
personal
at all.
aspects. Yeah.
Sorry, not at all.
Okay. Okay.
In fact, I've mentioned that in the introduction also. He was not worried. He never asked me,
Okay.
never, to omit something or to include something.
Okay.
He just, what we discussed after I finished the manuscript were factual things, where he said, where we discussed that, this could have been at this point, or this was the perspective of it, or
Yeah.
this was the reason why this happened. But I can tell you that he's bold enough to face, um, to take critique like that, as well as take appreciation in a very graceful manner. But yes, again, I repeat, he didn't ask me even once to omit or include anything.
So, what are the issues and topics that are exciting you right now? Of course, preparing for the next book, and yeah, what are the books you might suggest for our followers to read? Of course, after reading this one. So, yeah,
Well,
that would be
read
fun.
this book. Actually, this is an interesting book, and so is Maharaja and Denims. Actually, I think
Okay.
um, that's a very important book, and people, and there have been many attempts, I can tell you, to adapt this book into a movie. It's been the options have been bought twice for
Okay.
Maharaja and Denims, but
Okay.
it could not be converted. It's a it's a difficult book to adapt because
Okay.
it's a sensitive. You need some um, uh, mm,
Yeah.
yeah, some kind of courage to
Yeah.
handle a script like that.
Right.
Uh, so
What about this one? Has anybody approached you for
yes, I
converting this
have
one?
been
Okay.
approached. I have been approached for us for making a season for making seasons.
Oh wow.
Like on this book,
Okay.
but it hasn't materialized. But with Maharaja and Denims, definitely it's been optioned twice,
Okay.
and maybe who knows that it you know. Um, so my work is about Punjab, my state, my land, and however much I try to uh, write something else, I come back to my land. And my new book is also a novel, but again based uh, the setting is during the turbulent times.
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
I'm writing it. Let's see, I have to find a publisher, this,
Yeah.
that, the whole
Of course.
drama of it.
Of course. It takes time. It's not an easy process. And
Uh,
is that fiction?
and I think and I think the publishing world is today, is I don't want to critique it or something. They somehow have failed to understand Punjab.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Okay.
they only look through Punjab. They don't understand Punjab that well
Okay.
to understand
Okay.
books
Okay.
on Punjab,
Okay.
to appreciate books on Punjab.
Okay. Could that be because of the lack of perhaps representation in the publishing industry?
I think largely what we understand is through the media,
Okay. Okay.
and media largely is not um, is very event based reporting,
True. Yeah.
and media doesn't go to the depth. We are not trained. Our Indian media is not trained um, you know to look at things from a very nuanced, sensitive
Yeah.
manner. It is trained, conditioned through the eyes of sensationalism.
Right.
But the story of Punjab, as for a writer, it's a very touching story. If you look at Punjab as a person, as a woman, um, look what has happened on its soil,
Yeah.
and so, or as a man, or if I were to write if I were to write a biography on Punjab, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
such a curry chicken, butter chicken,
Yes.
uh,
Yes. I know.
I mean, horses have galloped on it, cannons
Yeah.
have been used,
Yeah.
army has trampled on its soil.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, it has given food to the nation.
Yeah.
Tractors, people have put in hours and hours toiling, tilling the land. So no one sees it from that perspective.
Is the coming up book fiction or
It is. It
it?
is.
Okay. Okay.
It is.
And I would like to tell everybody that I know it's a sad situation right now. We are in lockdown, but I spent the best 3 days of my life reading this one during lockdown. It is so, I mean, I don't want to say it to your face. I'll say it afterwards, much of it. But I love the book. And thank you so much for, being with us and writing this. It's an amazing book. And yeah, looking forward to
Thank
the next one.
Yes, thank you for having me over. It's been a pleasure, and all the best to you, to your book club, to
Thank you.
Dehradun, where I visited, 2-3 times while I visited the Doon School because I was researching. I picked up this file, which was very interesting.
Oh, you
his
did?
entire file from the school. Yeah, and
Okay.
all his observations, how lazy or good he was, all his black marks, all his.
Yes.
So,
So
so
the parts,
yes,
mentioned in the book about Doon School, you have picked up from the file. So that's
from the file, yes, from his
something.
school file.
Yeah.
I actually came down to the school, and the school was kind enough to share the file with me.
Wonderful, wonderful
All
stories.
the letters, yeah,
All the
everything
letters.
is all the letters. Everything is well
Wonderful,
researched. There's been a lot
wonderful.
of hard work,
Let's not
and I thank you.
tell the viewers everything. They have to pick up the book, buy the book, and of course, right now they can pick up the Kindle version. Check out this cover on Amazon and buy the Kindle version. Thank you
It's
so much,
titled
sir.
People's Maharaja. It's by
People's
Hay House.
Maharaja. Yes, it's
Yeah.
Hay House. Type in People's Maharaja. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the delightful stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best. Cheers to you.